Making your way through an endless stream. Silence cuts reality, but it seems only for a moment. Moments always seem to fade away. Searching for a picture, goes out of reach. Holding on freedoms that yours to keep. Or only for a moment. Moments always seem to fade away. Push through a door to an empty street. No one's there to meet you 'cause you're still asleep. But only for a moment, moments always seem to. Sorry, everyone, just a second. There we are. Sorry, everyone. This is what happens when you have to run your own show and do the switchboard and everything else yourself. All right, everybody. Welcome to Diverge Media. I'm Greg Staley. I am the owner of Diverge Media. And so this one was titled What You Didn't Know. This isn't anything new if you've been sticking around for a long time, but this is definitely something new if you haven't had the opportunity to stick around for a long time. So we're going to go through a bunch of stuff, including we had the Pfizer donations out today on our page talking about some of that. We're going to go into a little more in depth there and kind of show you some of the big money purchases. But I also just want to preface that by saying if you've seen that post, that isn't something new. This is an ongoing thing. It's not unique to one company. It's many companies that donate to government and political campaigns and PACs and things like that in the United States. But we're going to do our best to go through a lot of info. So hang tight with me. I'm just going to try to get myself organized and we'll jump into an article. First off, let's start this way. It is a common trope under our current narrative that anyone who is denying a vaccine is probably stupid. Let's just be honest. This is kind of the ongoing narrative. Now, let's go into what the studies say, because they can say all they want to say, but PhD educated are the most likely to be COVID vaccine hesitant, according to a study that surveyed 5 million people. Now, it's a preprint. It needs to be peer reviewed. That needs to be made clear. But in this survey, they surveyed over 5 million Americans, roughly, I think, 70,000 finished all the way through. And what they found was the most vaccine hesitant were actually PhD educated professionals. So as you can see the picture here, race and ethnicity beside the education level. And this is the U-curve essentially that breaks down. So this is 20% here at the side, or vaccine hesitant on the high school level, drops down lowest at a master's level, but is highest at a PhD. Now one can look into that. We can say maybe PhD students have to think through a lot of things. They're used to thinking critically, you're used to thinking analytically, and therefore that's why you see that shakeout. So first off, let's go right off the hop. If you're calling people stupid who are vaccine hesitant, PhDs are the most likely to be vaccine hesitant. Ask yourself the question why. Okay, boom, moving on. We're going to get going, try to be rapid fire. Secondly, we're going to be all over the place a little bit, but vaccine passports, this is being pushed down from the top now. I put on our page today, it looked like CNN put out that the FDA is probably within days of approving the Pfizer vaccine. Now, that could mean, well, it will mean, because under interim order, it would still be approved under interim order, but basically it would be approved through the FDA, which would make it I'm not sure how that's going to shake out, but right now, our interim order allows us to use other regulatory agencies, and if they approve something or they use EUA and we can look at the data and we agree, we can use that. That's what this interim order did around the COVID vaccines. Now, let me preface this by saying for YouTube, these opinions expressed are not those of the narrative. Viewer discretion is advised. Please go to the official sources. And that being said, let's get back to the show. So here we go. So we're going to go into the vaccine passport thing. We're going to break down. I wrote an opinion article about why that's racist. Now, I'm not one to play to that kind of narrative, but basically here's the premise. The people, the minority communities are the most likely to be vaccine hesitant. That's literally what the stats say. That's how it shakes out. So by definition, a vaccine mandate that's going to force this on everyone is by definition going to harm those in the minority communities more because they are the most vaccine hesitant. It's not that hard of a logic loop to follow, but here it is. We're going to go into the study. Okay, this one, this is from a Stats Canada report that was released in March of this year. Now, according to that report, 76.9% of Canadians are very or somewhat willing to receive a COVID vaccine. But this number drops off precipitously in the Black communities at 56.6%, Latin American at 66%, Arab communities at 68.1%, Métis communities at 67.8%, and Indigenous people are also less willing at 71.8% versus 76.9%. So just off the hop, one would say if we're going to mandate this down, it's going to affect those groups more. By definition, just what the stats say. Forget your emotions. I don't care. I really don't. Forget your emotions. I don't care. What the stats say is that will be the effect. Leave your woke garbage at the door. I don't give a damn. Moving on. I realize many of the people that have been watching me for a long time probably aren't aware that I can be pretty blunt and I can be pretty bold, but I'm usually pretty reserved. But I've seen that message come down again, CNN, where we're looking at the FDA approval, and I'm thinking of how that's going to affect us here. And you know what? Enough's enough. We got to talk about some hard stuff. So let's get into some real fun stuff. Moving up here. So I wrote an article. I highly recommend you check it out. This article was written a long time ago, exposing the COVID narrative, setting the record straight. We're going to go through a bunch, but basically, if you get a cycle threshold of 35 or more, the chances of it being replication competent are minuscule. And we know, we have patients, and it's very frustrating for the patients as well as for the physicians. You almost never can culture virus from a 37 threshold. I think if someone does in a 37, 38, even 36, you got to say, it's just dead nucleotides, period. Now, who said that? Dr. Anthony Fauci. Let's not take Greg Staley's word for it, though. Let's play his words.
Right. Again, a good question. And what is now sort of evolving into a bit of a standard that if you get a cycle threshold of 35 or more, that the chances of it being replication competent are minuscule. So that if somebody, and we have patients, and it's very frustrating for the patients as well as for the physicians. Somebody comes in and they repeat their PCR and it's like 37 cycle threshold, but you almost never can culture virus from a 37 threshold cycle. So I think if somebody does come in with 37, 38, even 36, you got to say, it's just dead nucleotides, period.
Thanks, Dr. Fauci, for those enlightening words. Okay, so right from the horse's mouth. Okay, now what do we test at here in Ontario? What do we test at here in Canada? Just for the record, it's up to 38 cycles would be a confirmed positive. Okay, 38 to 40 is considered indeterminate. They were running up to 45 cycles at some points in the throughout the pandemic. Now we're going to pull up some stats. I'm going to do my best here to not lose you all as far as there's a lot of data to go through and I got to keep it organized. So bear with me, please. So we did another article, the joke that is COVID-19 testing. We took three studies or three references that we used: Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, the journal that was published in the Journal of Clinical Virology, and real-time PCR test detection in Canadian laboratories. So testing positive, what does it mean? Now, from the study, PCR detection of viruses is helpful so long as the accuracy can be understood. It offers the capacity to detect RNA in minute quantities, but whether the RNA represents infectious virus may not be clear. Okay, so what does testing positive mean? All right, let's go. Imagine a virus enters your body. I believe we have, that's a true positive. Okay, Let's see. Sorry, everyone. There's a lot. Okay, right from here, cebm.net. I don't want you just seeing it out of my article. I want you to see where it's coming from. This is the University of Oxford that runs this Center for Based Medicine. This article was put out September 23rd, 2020. Okay, now get down. Explanation of the experiment shows that whether a virus is still infective. Imagine that a virus enters your body. In a few months, it might not do anything to you anymore. It might not do anything to your cells, virulence. And it might also lack the capacity to move into another person, infectivity, when you speak or sneeze. It is also possible that this virus simply never did anything to you and lacked infectivity from the very beginning. But traces of the virus might still be present in the person. In this case, the virus is present but inactive. So how do you know that the virus is active? You do the PCR. If the virus is found in the person, the PCR true positive, that virus is injected into a culture cell. If by injecting that virus into culture cells, the virus is not able to reproduce cells, the virus can no longer infect anybody. This means that even if you are a PCR positive, you are no longer contagious. That is, the virus in you is no longer active. Now, we're going to get back to that. But do you think they're actually testing and sending that off to labs to ensure that it's infectious anymore? The answer is a hard no. They used to do this at the beginning. They used to send it off to the National Microbiology Lab, I believe in Winnipeg, I think. And they used to test it there. They don't do that anymore. PCR is good enough. You don't need to know whether you're actually infectious. So how many asymptomatic people who are infectious with nothing tested positive? That needs to be laid out for everyone. You need to understand we're using extremely faulty testing. We need to get this across. Okay. Coming back. Now, the estimated probability of recovering from a virus from samples with a cycle threshold greater than 35 was 8.3%. Now, the page on PCR testing that I found here, no viral glow, we were going to talk about, I have pulled up. Sorry, I know, and again, want everyone to see it from the page itself. So, Bullard May, I think I have this one here. Is it? Nope. All right, we'll just read it for the article. My apologies. You can see this again. The article is exposing the COVID narrative, setting the record straight. The links are in there. I don't have time to go through all this and make sure it's all from exactly the source, but the sources are here. The page on PCR testing says no growth viral was observed in samples with a cycle threshold greater than 24 or symptom to test of greater than 8 days, meaning after 8 days of having symptoms to test, there also wasn't any. This means no viral growth was observed in the 90 samples tested that ran at a cycle threshold of more than 24 cycles. Okay, so I'm going to read directly from here. So they took 26 samples demonstrated viral growth, but no growth was observed in samples with cycle threshold greater than 24 or symptom onset of greater than 8 days. Okay. So we're running up to 38 here in Canada, 38 cycles in Ontario. Now, there's much variability, which can affect the result in unrelated actual quantity to the specimen. What are other things that can affect the outcome of a PCR test? Well, what else? Other things that can affect it are the type of swab used for the collection, the transport method, the media and quality of the specimen collection, the PCR assay itself, the way that the threshold line is set up for each, and by who. Was it set up by a human or was it set up by software? So these are all things that can affect it. Continuing on, maybe here's something else to consider here. Now, you could test negative somewhere in Ontario and test positive somewhere else in Ontario. How is that possible? Well, quite frankly, different labs test at different cycles. At least this was the case. I can't verify this information anymore because I'm not sure where the testing, they change this stuff quite frequently. But at the time, they were testing through multiple places. And the Public Health Ontario did a PCR review. One of the things they said, in April of 2020, IQMH, the Institute of Quality Management and Healthcare, sent a proficiency testing panel to 26 different laboratories in Ontario who reported the following. Variability of cycle threshold values of up to 8 cycles were observed for the same specimen material tested across the participating laboratories. So, again, you could be testing somewhere in Ontario, negative, and you go somewhere else where they test with a higher cycle threshold, and now you're what? You're positive. Now, here's another thing to consider. When you go to hospital 13 days before surgery, you need to test. Now, if you, for some reason, got sick and they tested you in hospital, you're an ICU patient, hospitalized with COVID. This is how these things break down. Again, we need to ask questions. How often are they testing people in hospital? For what reasons are they testing people? And like a lot of this goes on. How many people? This is my biggest question. How many people in hospital are actually symptomatic with something? Are there for unrelated reasons? These are the big questions that need to be asked around this. Okay, continuing on. In complex laboratory network environments, this is from the Public Health Ontario document, such as in Ontario, where specimens may be tested at one of several laboratories, greater than 40 laboratories conducting SARS-CoV-2 in the province on a variety of different extraction and PCR platforms, utility of such reporting is questionable. Basically saying it depends on, where it's coming from, what cycle thresholds were used, what assays were used, so it can't be a straight comparison. These are questions that, is anybody asked? The big question, are certain assays picking up more positives than not as a comparison to other assays? Are they even testing, comparing the assays side by side, the same person, etc.? The answer is probably likely not, but we continue. The document goes on to say that false positives are rare, but we keep in mind that a positive case doesn't mean much of anything, and that we know that no growth, viral growth was observed in samples with a cycle threshold greater than 24. So doctors early on, New York Times wrote about this. There was doctors coming out and saying, we need to lower the threshold cycle. This is way too high. It was ignored. So just to recap here, Dr. Anthony Fauci of the NIH has said, PCR over 35 cycles picks up dead nucleotides and almost always can't be cultured. And I'm paraphrasing there. Now we run up to 38 cycles in here in Ontario. That would be considered a positive here. So we do run 38 to 40s considered indeterminate, and they would retest. That's my understanding. Then we also know that the Institute of Quality Management in Healthcare sent out 26 different labs, sent tests to 26 different labs that ran their cycles to determine that the variability of that cycle thresholds, depending on the lab here in Ontario, changed up to 8 cycle thresholds observed for the same material being tested. Now, cycle threshold also cannot be reliably used to determine virus viability. Put another way, it can't be determined whether or not the thing you have is actually infectious or not based on the cycle threshold. It can't be determined reliably based on the thresholds cut off, meaning, hey, 26 we know for sure. Or no, that's not what it's saying. It's saying we don't know. This can't be a reliable method based on a certain cycle threshold cutoff. Now, Canada used to send our results to confirm that they could actually infect others to the National Microbiology Lab, but no longer do. Early on, I sent out a message, or I put out an article asking the government of Canada to send positive PCR tests that didn't have symptoms to see if they were actually infectious. Crazy idea, I know. No response, of course, but wouldn't that be common sense? Rather than panic, everybody panicked over Alberta, but rather than panic, if somebody's exhibiting no symptoms and didn't have a close contact, why are we forcing them to quarantine and shut down their lives? Again, asymptomatic spread. Dr. Maria Verkerkhove of the World Health Organization, early on, you can look it up. She backpedaled later on, basically changed up the verbiage, but less than 5%, according to known studies. Less than 5%. And there's another study you can look into, Wuhan. Roughly 10 million residents were tested. Okay? Out of those 10 million residents that were tested, 300 were positive, PCR positive. Then they sent those to a lab to determine if they were actually infectious. Can anybody guess the number of people that were actually infectious with something that had a PCR positive test? Any guesses? 0. Goose egg. When as a society, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, when as a society have we ever focused, give the World Health Organization the benefit of the doubt, Let's say it's 5%. When as a society have we ever focused on 5% of a problem and punished 95% of people at the same time, or everyone at the same time? Ever. Never. All these Nancys and Karens and Kens out there, listen, you want to wear your mask, you think it's whatever. Where were you in influenza season? Huh? Exactly. Continuing on. We're going to do our best to keep going through stuff here. A lot to go through. Okay. Well, we got the variability. I'm going to start exiting off stuff here. Apologize. It's a lot of stuff. Okay. We're going to pull this up just so everybody can see. These are the cycle thresholds that are in Canada. So this was linked in the article, real-time PCR-based SARS-CoV-2 detection in Canadian laboratories. Continuing down here, they have a graph chart, different hospitals or different labs and the cycle thresholds, positivity cutoff value, right? So where it could depend on where you're sending it. 35, 35, 35, oh, 40, right? BC, okay. So we're looking, oh, that's BC, 35, 35. Now we're in Manitoba, 36 and a half, New Brunswick, 40, Newfoundland, 33. Well, did Newfoundland really have less cases, or did they just run at less cases per 100,000, or did they just run at a lower cycle threshold? I don't know. Nova Scotia, 35. Ontario, 38. Not determined. That's an interesting one. Quebec, 37. Saskatchewan, 36. Ontario, St. Joseph's Healthcare, 45 at the time. 45. Again, don't know if they're running at that high anymore. This is an older article, but again, it's there. So they're running two different assays. 45. Continuing on, and we remember 40. Okay. Now we run up to 38. Just want to clarify. So even if you don't believe, that's a small sample I quoted for the record on the couldn't be cycled below above 25 cycles greater than, it was a small sample. It's about 90 people. But even if you don't take it on that, Dr. Anthony Fauci himself has said, right? 36, 37, 38, pretty much probably picking up dead nucleotides. Well, up to 38 is guaranteed or is considered a positive test here in Ontario. You need to know this stuff. How many people are actually sick? Okay. We took a problem. We're not there yet. We got to get into some more stuff. So let's bear with me here. Sorry, everyone. We're going to pull up something and I'll show you, because my words don't mean much of anything if you can't see what I'm talking about. Oh, if you look up PCR test Diverge Media, you should be able to find it on Facebook yourself. Let's see if it's still here. There we go. Straight from the FDA. So this is probably something you've never seen unless you follow us and have been following us for a while. Okay, so this is the FDA document. You can go look, find it yourself. Links there. But I'm going to read this and pull it up for everyone here. Okay. FDA. Okay. Detection of viral RNA may not indicate the presence of infectious virus or that 2019 nCoV is the causative agent for clinical symptoms. Louder for everyone in the back. Detection of viral RNA may not indicate the presence of infectious virus or that COVID is the causative agent for clinical symptoms. Continuing on, this test cannot rule out, bottom line here, diseases caused by other bacterial or viral pathogens. This test cannot rule out diseases caused by other bacterial or viral pathogens. Okay? I mean, you can find it. It's here. I don't really know what to say. I really don't know what to say. This information I've been covering for... How long have I been covering? Somebody help me in the comment section. You've been following a while. A year? Little over? But we were crazy. I mean, for the record, if you don't know about me, I was a reservist. I was in the military. I was told to stand down. And as we were sitting at home, I was looking at all the data coming out. And after, I think it was about the end of April, I had determined there was enough data to determine this was not what they were making it out to be. It's predominantly affecting the elderly. Children weren't at risk the way they were saying. And so I put in to leave. That's how Diverge Media started. My brother, it was a Conestoga Dean's Honor grad journalist at Conestoga, and he was looking for his own thing to do at the time. And I laughed because I seen the writing on the wall. I literally said, I don't think this is going to end anytime soon. Governments don't willingly give up power. And that's why I left. And I started Diverge Media. And here we are for months and months and months and months and months and months and months. Been railing on this same topic. Cost-benefit analysis. Why does anybody think it's a good idea to shut down the entire economy for those not even at risk? Nobody thinks targeted protection is a better idea. We all bought into the panic. Is that it? You can look at the stats. If you're 50 and above, you're probably going to be okay. So how about all the 50-year-old plus? If you're scared, stay home. Let's get back to normal. No, that's too much. That's crazy. That's conspiratorial. There's some middle ground here. Can we just acknowledge there's some flipping middle ground between lockdown, lose your business, big box store gets to stay open, mom and pop's got to close, restrictions. There's some middle ground between that and let it rip, okay? It's not a controversial thing. There's some middle ground, pretty obvious middle ground. Talking about the Great Reset, I see that comment there. And again, we're not even going to get into that, but our deputy prime minister of this country, Chrystia Freeland, sits on the board of the World Economic Forum as a trustee member, as a board trustee member. I've written about it. I'm getting a little frustrated. Good. Good. I don't ever let myself get frustrated. It's about time this comes out. Bear with me as I try to organize my thoughts here. Continuing back, Toronto Sun article. What's happening today? Ontario, you now have to separate we now have separate self-isolation rules for vaccinated individuals. Okay? Separate self-isolation rules. Based on what? That PCR test. You may not be infectious with anything. You could no symptoms, it doesn't, but you were exposed. And if you refuse to test, you also have to isolate. Isn't this a great system they've set up? Read this from this article here. It's Toronto Sun. Check it out yourself. What happens if you're exposed to COVID? Well, individuals who are not fully vaccinated, who have not received both doses, 14 days prior to exposure should self-isolate and test right away. Individuals must self-isolate for 10 days, regardless of whether or not the test returns negative. Well, so even if the test returns negative, those tests that you can't even trust, quite frankly. Listen to Kerry Mullis, the creator of it. He said, you run it at a high enough cycle threshold, it makes you believe in the Buddhist motion that everything's in everything because you can find anything in anything, essentially. I'm paraphrasing. Don't take my word. This information's been out there freely. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of, we'll say, tinfoil hat wearers that take some of this and they run 100 miles with it, and you're getting the 100-mile version and not the concrete version. I get it. But this information's out there for people that want to see it. It's really available. Continuing from that article. It's also recommended you take another test after a 7-day self-isolation period. Okay, now, but if you're fully vaccinated, they're experiencing symptoms, they must self-isolate, get tested right away. But if the test returns positive, follow the self-isolation rules. If it's negative, they can continue self-isolation once symptoms have improved for at least 24 hours or 48 hours. If they are not experiencing symptoms, after being exposed, they're not required to self-isolate. So, think about this here for a second. Well, they're vaccinated. Well, they're going to spread it less? What is a ship of 700 people and 100 tested positive? Now, the argument is that it does reduce the spread. Okay. But this is the case. You don't have to test. You're allowed to go back to normal even after, as long as you're vaccinated. Continuing on. No, I don't need that one. Okay, let's get into some interesting stuff that I found that perhaps you're unaware of. So I've shown this system before. ACES Pandemic Tracker. Now, this is a system that was meant to track the acute care surge of the Ontario ICU rooms. And all of a sudden, I noticed something. I haven't been back to that site in a while, and I thought, I'd bring this to your attention. Okay. This is a great resource. So as you can see, and apologize for my sweating, I don't have central air up here. But we're going to set this up. 30-day moving average. We don't want just pneumonia. We want select all, infection, influenza-like illness, and pneumonia. That should capture pretty much any symptoms related, right? What do we notice? We got this up, right? Perfect. Okay, what do we notice? This black line is our 2020 30-day moving average. In the 2021, what do we notice? Below the historical average for new hospital admissions. Now, this is an ICU. This isn't the argument that like we've heard, oh, they're canceling surgeries for ICU. No, this is new hospital admissions. And it's below average. And then I noticed something. What was the last update they did? They've completely stopped updating this website. June 24th, 2021. That was the last update. Completely. It was an amazing resource. I've used it many times. And all of a sudden, we're not going to update this good piece of information anymore. I presume because many people started cluing into where it was and looking at the data as I was and reporting on it. But maybe that's just me, hypothetical in my opinion. I don't know. I'm very curious why all of a sudden that resource is taken away and it's not being updated when it was consistently being updated. Continuing on here. Trying to organize the thoughts here. So there's a lot going on. I have some politics lined up for the show too, so apologize. So all that on the COVID narrative. Now we're going to come back in here. Back to a study. There is much more variability which can affect the result is unrelated to the actual quantity present in the specimen. This includes type of swab, correlation. So it's all there. De novo, right? I just wanted to show the fact that this is from Public Health Ontario. Now we're going to get into some politics, I think. Okay? Trust me, this transitions. Now, Aaron O'Toole is saying, or not saying a lot for the record, not saying a lot. And silence is deafening. On the vaccine passport, on the vaccine mandates, what does the Secure the Future plan say? You can check out my article. I broke down the 83 Secure the Future plan, picked it apart. Basically, you can go line by line. It's going to be, this is kind of the point, one paragraph, and then direct quote. So you can go through it. But in that, he says that booster shots and increased testing. Okay, that's what he thinks. Now, Trudeau's attacking him on the merit of he's not going to enforce the vaccine passport, and I'm a great guy because I am. That's pretty much where this is going. But here's the thing. Silence is deafening. Actions speak louder than words. What am I talking about? Let's go into the article. Yukon Conservative Party candidate was booted from position due to what? Vaccine views. August 12, 2021. Jonas J. Smith said he has been removed as candidate in the upcoming election. Now, why was he removed? He says, this comes as shocking news to me, my family, my local campaign team, and the thousands of supporters across the territory. With an imminent election call, this is devastating news for the conservative movement in the Yukon, and I fear it will have repercussions across this country. Continuing. Federal conservative Smith said he was told the reason for his disallowment was his opposition to calls for implementation of mandated workplace vaccinations and vaccine passport requirements in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay. So Aaron O'Toole is trying to be quiet. This is my opinion for the record. But if you're not going to come out and definitively say you're against, why are you doing that? You kick out a candidate for that exact view you say you're not going to mandate. Right? Actions speak louder than words. What O'Toole is doing is looking at polling, in my opinion, and seeing that a large part of his base is not on board with this. Well, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, so to speak. So I'm not really going to take a position. I'm just going to be silent about it. And I'll kick out anybody who speaks against it, and we'll just hush hush. But what do you think is going to happen if he gets a minority or a majority government? Congrats, you're going to have the same thing Trudeau's campaigning on. Exact same thing. I would be shocked if they didn't want to mandate it. Why else would I be shocked? Because I look at what the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party is doing. And what are they doing? Same thing. Where is it? There's so many articles up. So we have Doug Ford now. He's come out and said he wants to mandate it for federal employees. If that's going to happen in Ontario. And then we look at Jonas Smith. What do we think is going to happen once he wins the election, if he wins the election? And if Nova Scotia was any indicators how this election will play out, we could have a conservative minority or conservative majority government. What do you think is going to happen? He hasn't come out firmly against it, and he kicked out someone who did. And then the PC party, Ontario PCs, mandating it. Actions speak louder than words. I don't give a damn the lip service that a politician pays me, quite frankly, and you shouldn't either. Because I don't know if you know this, secret time, all politicians do is pay lip service. They look at the polls, and then they say what they need to say to get elected. And it's about time that we recognize it's time to call them out on it. If you ain't going to stand for something, you'll fall for anything, people. Oh, don't split the vote. I just want to throw this out. The vote split argument. Stupidest freaking argument out there in Canadian politics, okay? Oh, don't split the vote. Well, I don't see you telling the NDP and the Green Party that. Don't split the vote for the Liberals? No, don't split vote for... Well, listen. If they represented any of my values, they might actually earn my vote. But they don't. And they haven't for a long, long, long time. And if they had found their backbone in recent history, maybe I could consider voting for them. But when you refuse to speak against the charter violations that have ongoing for the last 17, 18 months, and then you kick people out who do speak against them, I'm pretty darn sure where you stand on the issue that matters to me. Here we go. Ontario to meet with cabinet to discuss mandatory vaccinations for healthcare education workers. Doug Ford will meet with his cabinet to discuss the possibility of making it mandatory for healthcare and education workers to be fully vaccinated against COVID. Sources tell CTV News. Okay, August 16th, 2021. Do you think he's going to be on your side when the time comes? That's the Ontario PC government. Federal level kicked someone out too. I just want to really hammer this home for people. He's not going to have your back. None of them are. And this vote split argument, if they represented my values, they would earn my vote. Trudeau, yes. Trudeau is terrible. He's awful. Okay, I don't want him getting back in. I certainly don't want him getting a majority. Then why don't you stop talking about splitting the vote and actually vote your conscience and values? Because I'm sick and tired of voting for the lesser evil and still having a crap government in power. Maybe that's too blunt for people, but quite frankly, don't care anymore. Don't care. All right, let's get back into some fun political stuff. All right, Pfizer, you seen that that document I put out on the Facebook page? Perhaps you haven't, but basically here's it. Pfizer puts out their political donations every year, and it's nothing new. In fact, I actually think the donations slightly went down during COVID. But get to this. We have, I just want to point this out. Who are they giving money to? Republican State Leadership Committee, $370,000. Coming back up here. This is in the District of Columbia. Okay. They also gave $250,000 to the Democratic Attorneys General Association, Democratic Governors Association, $1 million to them, Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee. Republicans also got money. Don't you worry. Okay. They got $765,000 for their Republican Governors Association. Okay. Now, why does that matter? What is a Democratic or Republican Governor Association? Well, let's go into that. Democratic Governors Association. Who is it? Michelle Lujan Grisham, Phil Murphy, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer. With the GOP moving full steam ahead to suppress the vote and obstruct President Biden's agenda, 38 governor races between 2021 and 2022 will determine the future of healthcare, our jobs, our schools, and American democracy itself. What is this? It's a slush fund, everyone. It is a slush fund for these governors to be able to campaign and run. Okay? $1 million to the Democratic Party. But don't you worry, the Republicans got money too. This is the Republican Governors Association. We have, oh, look at all these nice names. Ron DeSantis is in there. Larry Hogan. Now, this doesn't mean, obviously, it's going to affect everybody in the same way. But when this many people are on the take, it does affect, I mean, we'd be naive to think that these large political campaign donations don't affect policy on some degree, right? I mean, that's just the reality, and it's happening on both sides. They're covering the floor. So to use a sports analogy, they're spreading the floor. They want to make sure they cover all avenues. Now, this, when you go through this document, you see that they're even donating down to the city councilor level. Okay, so Florida Democratic Party also got money. Florida Republican senatorial campaign. And then they're giving money out. Marco Rubio received money. Dan Crenshaw's received money. I mean, on and on the list goes. And I'm not saying all these people are not going to speak up. But you have to ask yourself the question, why are so few politicians speaking against such... We're talking about mandatory things that are against the charter, against the Constitution. Why are so few politicians speaking up? Well, it's a lot harder to speak against the people handing you money. You don't bite the hand that feeds you, especially if you need the money. Now, clearly the need's not the same everywhere, and that affects different people differently. That's clear. We're not talking about small sums of money for some of these people. And sometimes, like, we're seeing $1 million go out to the Republican governors, to the Democratic Governors Association, $700,000 plus to the Republican Governors Association, $60,000 to the California Democratic Party, $1 million to the District Conference of Western Attorney Generals. On and on. And you start looking at who are all these groups? What influence do they have? Marco Rubio got $7,500. Dan Crenshaw got $3,500. Many governors are on the take as well. California Republican Party, $15,000. District of Columbia, we've seen all that. Florida, $11,500 to the Conservatives for Principal Leadership, and that's run by Representative Paul M. Renner. Florida Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee got $35,000. $35,000 went to the Republican Party of Florida. Now, in total, they spent $8.978 million from January 2019 to December of 2020. That's how much Pfizer spent on political campaigns, and then two politicians and two political PAC campaigns. 1 year, $8.9 million. Now, they're not unique. I'm not picking on Pfizer. It's just that I was able to find the data. That's the one I found. This is not unique, but it's something you need to understand. Many, many companies are doing this in the States, at least. Here, the rules are different. I'm still looking into how it shakes out here. But we know how the influence effects from the States affects our politicians here. So if there's influence there, it's going to affect how things play out here. Close it out. Sorry, everyone. Now we got a few videos for everyone. And close out some things that I think are important for perspective again. We have Justin Trudeau speaking with reporters. I have him in Coburg. We're going to look at that real quick. And then I have something out of Australia, because it needs to be said that if we don't stand firm against this now, it is only going to get worse. All about personal choice. You do you. Okay? But it needs to be understood that this is a dangerous direction we are heading down. It's not normal to segregate people based on whether or not they've taken an injection, that the normal time frame for something to be approved and look at the long-term efficacy results is 10 to 12 years for drug and vaccine development. We're only in about 2-3 years on this. And if you look at the emotional turmoil that's been resulted as the fear campaign that's gone on, do you really think people are looking at this objectively as objectively as they should? Do you really think people are picking apart everything as much as they should when you come, you step up, and you get attacked? Are we educating the public on what adverse reactions they should look for? I bet you if you asked, 10 10 people, I bet you almost half, probably maybe more, wouldn't even know that Guillain-Barré syndrome, myocarditis, pericarditis, those type of things have been experienced and are actually listed as potential side effects. I bet you they wouldn't even know. And there's definitely no public health campaign that says, hey, if you have these symptoms after you've received your injection, you may want to go to a doctor because that may be an adverse event. That may be an adverse result. Is that happening? No. Physicians College has basically threatened our physicians here if they speak out. Do you really think you're getting an unfiltered version of the story? Outlets like mine get shadow banned. Our text gets removed from our stuff when people share it. Lots and lots of people don't see our work altogether. They're actively going out of the way. We have social media is a great thing, but the flip side of that is it's a monopoly on most of our social media. Almost all of it's going through YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and a handful of others. And so it's pretty easy to control the flow of information. It really is. And that's something we need to think about. Are you actually getting all the information? Here's what I recommend you can do to get outside of this. I don't know if you have Twitter, but it's great for news sources because it's usually pretty short, to the point, people posting on both sides. Go follow a bunch of people that you agree with, and then intentionally find people you disagree with. Preferably, the more you disagree with them, the better, but not troll posters or crap posters, nothing like that. No, find professionals and journalists and people that you disagree with and go about half and half. I have about 880 people that we follow on Twitter, and I try to make it like 1-to-1 for people I agree with versus disagree with. If you're not doing that, you're getting a social media algorithm that's tailored to what your bias is. And if your bias is one way, you're only going to get one side of the story. You need to have both sides of the story because you're getting attacked because you don't have both sides of the story. And that's the gaslighting that's being used to further divide people that are bringing up legitimate points of views. Remember when I said that there's, people that are bringing up this stuff, and then the people take it 100 miles, and then people get the 100-mile version, and they go, that's messed up, tinfoil hat. Yeah, well, that's because you need to know both sides so you can have that debate and not go into territory that's untrue and is falsehoods. All right, let's get into some videos.
We've had your back, and now it's time to hear your voice. The decisions your government makes right now will define the future your kids and grandkids grow up in. So in this pivotal, consequential moment, who wouldn't want a say? Who wouldn't want their chance to help decide where our country goes from here? Canadians need to choose how we finish the fight against COVID-19 and build back better. From getting the job done on vaccines to having people's backs all the way to and through the end of this crisis. For example, as a government, we chose to make sure that federal public servants and everyone boarding a train or a plane be vaccinated.
All right, so just a little clip there, and that's him announcing the election. He still hasn't released the platform, by the way. Still hasn't released the platform. He's basically running on, give me a majority so that I can jam a vaccine mandate down your throat, and I'm also a great guy because I said so. I mean, let's not remember 1, 2, 3 ethics violations. Let's not remember SNC, Jody Wilson-Raybould, blackface 3 times. No, let's just forget all that. Oh, more debt than both world wars combined during this COVID. No. I'm going to bring a vaccine mandate. I have your best interest at heart. Just vote for me. So that's kind of what he is running on when he announced that. Still no platform yet. And what is the result of this? I think about people are extremely frustrated, so I'm hesitant to make any real assessment on this. But he is multiple times across the country now been booed and heckled as he showed up to campaign. So let's play another clip here for you. This is Coburg. And this has been the reoccurring theme in multiple places he's gone. Lots of booing, but I mean, will that translate into the voter box? That's a good question. We look at Nova Scotia. I mean, it gives some hope, but people also voted the Conservatives in with the majority. You know, that could be them punishing them. But again, if your issue is vaccine mandates and not locking down anymore, I'd be hesitant to buy into the Conservatives will save me narrative. But continuing on here, that's Coburg. And I want to bring this one up because if we don't put the stop to this, I'm looking at Australia and listen to the way their leaders are talking.
Good morning, everybody. Yesterday in New South Wales, 132,000 people came forward to get vaccinated. Outstanding result. Thank you so much. If we keep this rate going, we will hit all our targets in relation to vaccination. We're now at 5.6 million jabs in New South Wales and 48 hours, Health, Police and a New South Wales working group, given the compliance challenges that police have updated us on in the last few days and given the surge in case numbers in the last few days, the government is now about to announce final measures to make sure we do everything we can. We throw everything at getting the case numbers down, but also while we do that, we put all our energies in getting the vaccination rates up. And I can't thank our citizens enough because our aim is always keeping people out of hospital, keeping people alive and well, and that is the measure of success.
That is the measure of success, keeping you out of hospital, keeping you well. Okay, so if we can destroy the entire economy, go broke, our hospital system craps out because we don't even have the tax infrastructure to fund it properly anymore. Pats on the back. We did our job, ladies and gentlemen. Woo! That's what they're talking about. Cost, benefit, analysis. I've only been saying this for 16 months on this platform. Hasn't happened yet. Government hasn't even released a cost benefit analysis of the measures. Now ask yourself, $1 trillion in debt. What's the interest on that debt? They're promising all these goodies right now that we can't afford. That's leading to the inflation that you're experiencing right now. And they keep promising more. But at some point, if they're not going to jack through our revenues through the sky and find ways to make a ton more money for Canada, they're going to tax you more, or they're going to cut services, or both. Cost benefit analysis. Pats on the back, everyone. You did it. You kept people out of hospital. Maybe you can do it for 2-3 years before we start losing the ability to actually fund these things properly. And how ludicrous has this all gotten, by the way, when we're talking about hospitals being overwhelmed and they then talk about firing 900 staff members if they don't get vaccinated. Up to. What am I talking about? That's not the one. Is this the one? Oh, I don't have it up. Okay, basically, Toronto United Health Network, the hospital there, that hospital network, they contacted 900 employees. This is as according to the Toronto Sun, and basically have said, put out a letter of notice. You don't get vaccinated, you're not going to have a job. That's 900 employees. We're talking about the same argument here, right? We're going to overwhelm the hospitals. The unvaccinated pouring in, overwhelming the hospitals. Hey, I know there's 900 of you, but shut up and get it now. Otherwise, you're fired. It's all about your health. Vitamin D, conspiracy theory, according to our health minister, Patty Hadu. Vitamin D, the thing that we know most Canadians are deficient in. Almost every Canadian during the winter, but even some all year round. That's a conspiracy theory. Ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, been around forever. You know, if used at low doses and in proper doses, the risk really isn't that high. We're not even treating with that. What is the treatment right now in Canada? Go home. Be quiet. If you develop really bad symptoms, go to the hospital. Well, is that it? Like, what kind of protocol are we talking about here? This is how we're treating people in this country. And then it gets crazier. Burial costs covered for Canadians killed by approved vaccines. Government, August 20th, 2021, put this out. Burial costs will now be covered by Ottawa for individuals killed by federally approved vaccines. I mean, timing is everything, and I'm just going to interject my opinion here. Maybe that's, you want uptake to kick up. Maybe now's not the time to say you'll cover funeral costs as a government. Maybe not. Continuing. I'll just leave it at this. We're going to close out and we're approaching our hour mark. Cost benefit analysis is the word of the day. Sesame Street word of the day. Okay? There is no such thing as a solution in politics or in or in life. There's no solutions, everyone. There isn't a silver bullet to this thing. You can lock us down, you can restrict us, all of this, but that's not a solution. It's a trade-off. It's a trade-off. There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. And all we can do is seek to find a trade-off where the trade-off doesn't suck as much. Again, there's some middle ground to be found between restricting everything, locking down mom and pop shops, more dependence on government, and let it rip. Cost-benefit analysis would say it's vital that we find that middle ground now, before this entire nation goes broke. How many business owners, feel free to message me, because I promise you, I'll tell your story, and I'll tell it exactly the way you want it to be told. Your words, everything. How many business owners have just been sitting these last 17 months accumulating debt in hopes that the government will eventually get their throat off of their neck? Message me. I want to tell your story. Stop standing on the sidelines. I have people. How many people? Adverse reactions. I put out in a group of 15,000 people. Over 300 people reacted. Woohoo! A journalist wants to tell their story. You know how many people have reached out to me? Goose egg. 0. It falls on you. You need to have courage. You need to speak up. And this whole thing, cost-benefit analysis, you're going to look me straight in the eye and say, there's no way we could have done this any differently. We needed to spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, as we have $200 million, according to Blacklock's, $200 million of ventilators sitting in a warehouse collecting dust that have never been used. Couldn't have spent it any better. Pats on the back. We did great. We are tanking our nation. How many business owners are barely hanging on, and the government's solution is we're never coming out of step 3. And now they're going even a step further. Well, we're just going to punish anyone who didn't get this vaccine, even if you're not at risk, even if you're doing things to take care of your health. Hey, by the way, if we're going to support a mandate on a vaccine, let's support a mandate on a body mass index passport. Well, we know that 70% of people that end up in hospital are obese. Okay, slap chop. There goes your burger, you fatso. I'm not trying to, guys, I'm that person. But if this is the absurdity of the argument, if you have the right to mandate that, then I have the right to slap a cheeseburger out of your hand. If you have the right to do that, then I have the right to tell you to run and stop eating so much and put down the fork. Because we know body mass index, if you're obese, you're way, way, way more likely to end up in hospital. Let's be serious. It's all about health. Come on, we're going to be serious, guys. It's all about health. You don't like it? Oh, that's too bad. Just run. Just get the shot, right? Just run. Just put the fork down. Just drink water. Drop your pop, your alcohol, and all that. Just do it. Oh, you have personal choice, do you? No, you don't. It's for the greater good. We're going to take away that personal choice. It's for the greater good. That we're going to mandate what you can buy. You know what? Maybe we'll just start nice and we'll do a little coercion tactic. Maybe we'll just make all the foods that aren't good for you that you love cost astronomically more. Okay? 400% tax on alcohol. Let's do that. Let's go 1,000% tax on chips and pop. It's all about health. If you don't see these parallels, you're missing the point. Cost-benefit analysis. There is middle ground. We can protect the most vulnerable. We don't need to be this stupid. Talk to one business owner to give you a perspective of how hard it is. Imagine your mortgage is tied to your business. And then the government says, got to shut down, John. It's for the greater good. Since when are you going to tell somebody that them feeding themselves and paying themselves is not essential? In a democratic society, give your flipping head a shake, people. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Democratic free society. I was on the Jamie West show and he goes, it's war times. It's not war times. We're talking about a virus that predominantly affects the elderly. Predominantly. If you're under the age of 50 and you take care of yourself, you're going to be fine. Okay? Chances are you got probably about the same chance winning the lottery if you're under the age of 25 and healthy of dying. Okay? Just so you know, I've been fighting this for a long time. And I'm going to keep fighting it. And I can use your help. I hate doing this, guys. You know I do. But divergemedia.ca, if you can donate, if you can purchase merch, we're going to keep bringing you election coverage. And we're going to keep covering the topics that matter. And we're not going to do it we're not going to be shy about it either. And we're going to tell it boldly. Just like I've always done. Because when something's right, you don't apologize. You try to be kind, compassionate, see the other point of view. People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And I'm sure we could disagree on a lot of points. But I care about this country. I care about my kids. I have 4 children. Care about their future. Care about what they're growing up into. A society where the government can dictate to them what they put on their face, where they can go, when they can go. That's not the Canada I grew up in. And that's not the Canada I want my kids to grow up in. And it's getting to the point where it's so bad that we're looking at leaving this province. I can't handle this anymore. I see the writing on the wall. Where are all the people standing up? You can't stay silent anymore. If you're the type that says, I'm not into politics, I'm not one to speak out and speak my mind, you're part of the problem. Those who know to do good and do it not, it's to them is evil. If you know something's wrong and you don't do it, it's wrong. It's that simple. If you know this is wrong and you're not speaking out because it's more politically convenient for you to shut your mouth, you're part of the problem. My kids are suffering because there's not enough people speaking up about the ludicrousness of this. Children are not at risk, and we're masking them up. What does that do to their development? The amount of flipping experts I've seen tell me, well, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't affect them that much. It's a minor inconvenience. Well, really? I didn't realize that breathing through a sweaty, you see how many times these kids reuse. I didn't realize breathing through a sweaty, disgusting mask was not a big deal. I didn't realize that fiddling with it, the thing that they said could spread it more, wasn't a big deal. But that's not even the crap that matters. What about their social development? What about their language development? The fact that diction, we know you need to see the lips move to develop your language properly. Well, the teacher's masked up. So what's that going to do? They're at like year 2 now. 2 years in school. 2. Where they're not seeing their freaking teacher's lips move. And you don't think it's a problem. Really? What is that doing to their social development? Are they talking to their friends and saying anxiety, depression? There was a survey that went around asking parents to report on it. And yes, kids are anxious. They're depressed. They don't like this. And it's your job to stand up for them. It's literally your job. You're the adult here. Oh, it's not. I had a father told me like a year ago, I was interviewing people in the park. He goes, it's not a big deal. This will just be the year that he didn't, hang out with his friends and do anything. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing. Kid's 10 years old. You just said, it's not that big of a deal. 10% of his life was spent locked indoors because you didn't want to rock the boat. And it wasn't even backed up by evidence or data. You did it because you were told to, and because they pressured you to, and because they slapped you across the face with social pressure again and again and again and said you're a bad person. I thought Canadians were smarter than this. I thought we could think. It's time to think. It's time to be bold. It's time to ask questions and put yourself in uncomfortable situations like this one.
Circle of what I assumed was all vaccinated people, and I catch COVID. Even if I got it for 6 hours or a day, or it was hardly anything at all, I'd be pretty pissed off.
Yeah, I hear you. Penelope, I'm glad you called today. Thanks so much for this.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. There's Penelope, and let's move on to Greg. Hi, Greg. Go ahead.
Hey, Greg. Hi, how's it going?
Good.
Good. I just curious if you'd known about the Stats Canada report on the willingness of people to receive vaccines by race and ethnicity. So I'm just going to read from this report. 76.9% of Canadians are very or somewhat willing to receive a COVID-19 vaccine. The number drops off precipitously in the Black community at 56.6%, Latin American communities at 66%, Arab communities at 68.1%, and Métis communities at 67.8%. The Indigenous communities in general also less willing at 71.8% compared to the 76.9%. So pushing for a mandate, I'm just going to ask the question, are we aware that we're also pushing for more segregation based on those numbers there being less willing in those race and ethnicity groups?
That is a really thin and hollow argument.
How is that thin and hollow?
Because these are war times, brother. These are war times. We're in.
So we're able
Go
to
ahead.
toss away the charter, the individual rights of the minority to protect the greater good, as you said.
Oh, give me a break. You're so woke. It's unbelievable, man. You can't, you're riding the woke train. You're riding the woke train.
Ask one more question on
Go
the
ahead.
hesitancy. What is the typical time frame that a vaccine or a drug takes to be passed? And yes, we know that there's lots of collaboration.
It varies.
But it's 10 to 12 years on average for long-term efficacy data to come out. For someone like myself who's 27, waiting for that long-term data to come out, not concerned about COVID, based on the numbers I've seen out of Stats Canada, based on what the government's reporting, why is it reasonable to mandate that when we don't know the long-term effects and that most drugs and most vaccines take 10 to 12 years to know that long-term data on?
You know what? We have to go with the science that we have, and we have to listen to the experts that we have, and the data and the evidence shows this thing works. It keeps people from dying. And you at 27, I sure hope that you don't get COVID and die because you're waiting for long-term data to come out. That's what I really hope for you.
Let's go another one.
Behind every wish is a desire. I really hope you don't.
70% of people are estimated to be obese that end up in hospital. Where's the promotion of a BMI and passport if we want to go this route where it's all about health? Why don't we promote that people need to get healthy?
Okay. Interesting question. Greg, thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
There you go. That was my phone call with Mr. West on the Jamie West Show. These conversations need to be had. You don't need to call into a radio show, but you need to talk to the people that are in your life. And you need to be honest with them, and you need to come from a place not of malice, not of anger, but of compassion, of love. And I'll leave you with this. There's a little food for thought. Everybody is asking, where is God in all this? You are the hands and the feet. You know, what is God going to give me to deal with this? Well, he already gave it to you. It's called courage. It's time to use it, everyone. Put yourself in the uncomfortable shoes, in the uncomfortable situations. Do it with love. Do it with compassion. Care about your fellow Canadians. And talk about these big picture items. Cost-benefit analysis. The things that matter most. You can't have good business and a good economy if it's locked down. You just can't. And there is a middle ground to be had here between ongoing restrictions that will never end and let it rip. And don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm Greg Staley of Diverge Media, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you.